So maybe you have some sort of bizarre health issue going on, or you're just otherwise not really in a state of balance. Like maybe you're just lethargic every day, maybe you're losing your hair, maybe you find that you just snap at your loved ones every day. Regardless, you're just maybe not feeling your best. And maybe you've even tried all sorts of healing modalities. Maybe you went the traditional route with allopathy and prescriptions. Maybe you even went the alternative route. Maybe you sought out a naturopath. Maybe you did acupuncture. Maybe you tried some herbs. Maybe you've even tried homeopathy. But have you ever tried, though, really and truly feeling your feelings? Without a doubt, every single one of the most complex chronic clients I have ever had, with the most stubborn, extreme health issues of them all, when we would get deep enough, again, without fail, every single one of them had in their past some sort of a complex trauma, whether it was an isolated, upsetting event or maybe a history of it. Without fail, every single one of them had very deep emotions beneath the surface that they had not really fully processed out. So now you might be wondering, well, what could these emotions really actually do? Well, in homeopathy, we're really just viewed as one person, one state of being. And so that includes not only our physical issues, but also our mental health, our emotions. Homeopathy truly is an all encompassing whole person, whole being way of looking at things. So, for example, in the state of Ignatia, Ignatia physically can include a lot of issues with the thyroid, it can include a lot of issues with strep. But underneath Ignatia, what really kind of guides and just funnels that homeopathic state is the sense of an unexpressed or an unprocessed grief, or something that just deeply affected the heart center. Or it could even maybe be a person with a history of just deeply suppressing and turning off their emotions. And so the end result in Ignatia is that the heart center is just kind of severed. It's deeply blocked off. This person is not feeling their feelings. And so this can be because of, again, some type of a grief that they experienced. It could be from a state of extreme detachment, of not wanting to feel their emotions. But regardless, that heart center is very closed off. So, from not having the free flow of emotion in and out of the chest in Ignatia, what happens then in this homeopathic state is that the emotions then start to migrate upward. And so, the first place that they start to migrate to is the throat. So, that's why in Ignatia it is very common for issues with suppressed strep throat, or even issues with the thyroid. It can include all sorts of, in children, even like throat tics, noises, those types of things. But then if it's still not expressed, though, it travels up even further to where in Ignatia then we could also start to see issues with eye tics, eye twitches. And what's really incredible though with Ignatia is that then when somebody starts taking that remedy and starts better feeling and processing those emotions, you start to see then the physical issues go away. Or even in the state of Rhus tox. Rhus tox is one that I typically see in a lot of people with joint issues. Physically with Rhus tox, there's often a very big need to move. It could even include pain that is better with movement, like stretching or so forth. It's typically a lot of people that really desire a lot of movement. So you might have types that maybe do a lot of yoga, maybe they run every day because they just very physically feel a lot better from movement. But if you go, though, again, deeper emotionally, psychologically into the state of Rhus tox, what you often find is a lot of suppressed anger, often even from childhood. Maybe they felt like their parents or even their father figure wasn't really fair with them, but they had to suppress that anger away. They didn't feel like they were able to act on that anger because they just maybe felt weak inside. So in this state of Rhus tox, the anger then goes deeply into the joints and into the muscles to where it aches them, it hurts them. It's associated with a lot of states of arthritis to where then through movement they start to feel better. And what's interesting though with Rhus tox is that I've seen this several times with clients is that they'll start to take Rhus tox for the first time and then they'll find themselves angry or raging, and it's because that essence of the emotion of anger, which was buried in their joints for so long, is finally then coming out to be dealt with. Or another type of angry one as well, which can be similar to Rhus tox, is Staphysagria. That is also a state of a lot of, again, just suppressed anger. But in Staphysagria, though, the difference is that they might feel that they were maybe violated in some sort of a way, especially having to do with a more genital type of a region. So it can be women who were maybe victims in some sort of a way, in a trigger warning kind of a way, or so forth, or just maybe even just feel again just some sort of an injustice done that just felt violating, even if there wasn't some kind of a physical act committed against them. To where in Staphysagria, they could have a lot of issues with their urinary function. They might find that they're having to pee a lot. They might even have issues peeing themselves or so forth. But with Staphysagria, though, what's interesting is that the big kind of keynote for it that really stands out with Staphysagria is because they suppress this anger, whereas in Rhus talks, they kind of try to express it by running or by movement. In Staphysagria, it just kind of builds up, builds up, builds up to where they just suddenly snap and they might throw something across the room or suddenly yell, suddenly shriek. And there's a big sudden element because they just have felt suppressed for so long in their emotions that they couldn't get it out, that finally they just kind of burst and it goes poof, and they throw or they lash out in some sort of a way accordingly. Or then you even have Thuja. Thuja deals a lot with, rather than anger that's suppressed or grief like in the ones that I mentioned, and Thuja, it just deals with a suppressed sense of self, sense of being. And what's interesting with Thuja is, for one, it deals with a lot of like left-sided issues, but even besides the left-sided aspect, there's just this very big, prominent, suppressed sense of self, where Thuja just feels like that they simply really can't be themselves. Maybe they really want to impress others. I see this a lot like with teenagers, where, they feel like other kids, other people won't like me if they really knew me, or maybe, it's somebody that's looking for a love partner that's suppressing what they're really all about, trying, to fit the molds of society. And the way that I like to view it is that you can only suppress who you are for so long until it just kind of starts popping out, kind of like the game, of like whack-a-mole, where you're hitting it and they keep popping up. But in Thuja, though, it pops up rather than in some sort of an angry outburst or throwing or like ticks with Ignatia. In Thuja, it starts popping up in physical warts or even in skin tags. It's almost like in Thuja, they're trying to suppress the sides of themselves that they don't like, maybe like their ugly kind of shadow side. And so then it quite physically starts popping out, as you can only suppress who you are really for so long without yourself just kind of begging to be let out. And that's what we typically then see in Thuja. And then there's also Carcinosin. Carcinosin can be very similar to Thuja, and that there's also a suppression of self there present. And both Carcinosin and Thuja are also states of just extreme immune system suppression. So to also then add on to Thuja, Thuja can deal with a lot of issues of never being well since. Like maybe somebody was sick and they've never quite been better since that. And so that's the thing with Thuja, is because the immune system is suppressed, then they just kind of get stuck after being exposed to a sickness because their immune system isn't quite really processing it out. And besides the emotional component. But then in Carcinosin, that is quite similar to Thuja, and that they're both states of a lot of immune system suppression. But what's interesting is, so where Thuja then pops out with a lot of warts, Carcinosin can pop out with a lot of moles. And this could also then deal with the cancer miasm, and miasms are a whole other topic I'll be getting into in a future video. So definitely subscribe if you haven't yet. But in the Carcinosin state, the essence of that is, so where Thuja desires to kind of suppress who they are because they want to put on a mask to the world that others might like better, in Carcinosin, you just have this very big sense of giving of yourself, but at the expense of yourself. So in Carcinosin, you can have a lot of issues like with maybe moms who are just doing everything at the expense of themselves. You know what I mean? You see this over and over. You'll see a mom that literally, they have a child and they never think of themselves again. Everything is about the baby, about the children, it's about meeting every single person's needs but their own. That is the essence of Carcinosin, just this like free-flowing type of energy to everybody else. So because of that, in Carcinosin, there can be a lot of issues with boundaries where they don't quite feel that they could really have any wants for themselves, or they might not even think to have a want for themselves. They're just always doing everything for everybody else. And with that state of immune suppression, it could then relate to a lot of different types of issues with the immune system. But what's interesting is that a big aspect of it is often then the appearance of moles which begin to appear. But what I would really like to get at, though, is that in all of these different examples here of states, and again, there's thousands of states, so don't think like, oh, which one of these, do I fit? Because you could very well fit a different one. But the point, though, that I really just wanted, to kind of get at here is that all of these states share in common a suppression of emotions. In Ignatia, you had the suppression of grief, and Rhus talks in Staphysagria, the suppression of anger, in Thuja and Carcinosin, the suppression of self. And all of these different states, which are then associated with all sorts of different diseases, all are rooted in just very just strong emotions which are not coming out, but that they'll beg to come out. So could it be then, to kind of circle back there to beginning, that the reason why you're not healing, that the reason why maybe traditional medicine's not working, maybe other types of alternative medicine's not working, that maybe even homeopathy is not working, is because have you really, truly, and deeply felt your feelings? Like what is going on in you? Do you have some sort of a trauma from your past? Are you maybe not really living your most authentic self? Or are you in a job that you have to struggle at, and some sort of a relationship you're struggling? Have you never really quite been able to get over maybe the passing of a loved one, or a horrible experience, or some just maybe even a car accident from years ago? Like, what is it that you truly feel inside that is going on? That is why I would really like to encourage you to do a practice which I found to be just unbelievably helpful for really rooting out your feelings. It's just when get a moment when it's quiet in your house, when you're by yourself, maybe when everybody else is asleep, just get out a notepad, go into, a quiet place where you won't be bothered, and just start to just deeply reflect. Take a few deep breaths, and just get a pen and paper and just write out the question on top of it of, how do I really feel? Just in that moment, like, do you have maybe some sort of a pain or a sensation in your joints, in your chest, in your back? So like, write that out. Like, I feel this tension in my back, or I feel this kind of a strange nervy sensation in my shins, or maybe you just feel this incredible weightedness on your chest. And then from there, just really just start to explore, and how am I feeling from that? Like, do you feel like crying? Do you feel like yelling and throwing? Just what is really going on in there? And just really just try to write out, maybe even draw some pictures about how do you just really, truly, and deeply feel in that moment. We just spend so much of our lives and of our times just trying to hide from the pain, push it to the side, whether, we're just willfully ignoring it because it's uncomfortable and it hurts, or it makes us sad. We might try to distract ourselves, like with browsing on the internet, watching videos, reading things. Maybe we distract ourselves with TV, with different types of current events. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to distract ourselves. But that's why it's like, when you just really take the time just to really just sit with yourself and write it out, you might come to find that you find yourself writing out like 5, 6 pages of things that maybe you haven't really even thought about in like 20 years or so. Things that you kind of forgot were even there, that you might really surprise yourself with what you find. And then maybe, you have been using homeopathy, especially, and maybe not finding the results that you like, or maybe they're not lasting. Well, from doing this, it can really just kind of help bring things more to the surface to even then better help the process with homeopathy. Like, I'm the type of person that I would chronically ignore my emotions, just kind of detach from them. Anything sad, I just wouldn't like to feel. I would just put it away, and I would just kind of chronically just focus on the future, like, what am I going to do next? Like, how am I going to plan my life in a way so that I don't have to feel a certain way? And so, from kind of cutting off my heart center, I've been the type of person that has benefited a lot from Ignatia, but I would find that I would have to over time, I take it in increasing potencies, kind of revisit it time and again. And I started to wonder, like, why is it that I have to do that? And it finally dawned on me one day that Ignatia was doing an incredible job at, helping to cathartically bring up and just really feel a lot of feelings. But the reason why I believe it was coming back is because at the same time, Ignatia was kind of the catalyst to help me feel things deeper. But the work though was still on me then to really then process it out. And that's why then the most recent time that I took Ignatia, I decided just to put some in water. If you really want to amplify the emotional aspects of remedies, I always suggest using water. It just really kind of brings it more out to kind of touch more on the emotional sphere. So I put some Ignatia and water and I went off by myself and I got a journal and a pen and I just was blown away at how much just came up out of me that I was able to release. And I'm a really big believer too is that crying when you're sad is kind of like throwing up if you're drunk or hungover. It's something that just kind of has to happen to really kind of get it out of there and feel better. And that's why I really believe with emotions is that if you have anything that's festering in on the inside, that to really get it out, you just really truly need to deeply, deeply feel it. Just sit with it, feel it, and then cry if you can, just to really just let it out. And only then will that emotion stop plaguing you, stop relating to physical issues, and it can ultimately really help you lead to a much better and healthier quality of life. Well, I hope that you found this interesting, helpful, or so forth. Be sure to leave a comment on any experiences that you've had, healing your emotional sphere or with homeopathy, and be sure to subscribe. Until next time.